I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus. Good evening, Bowling Green, and hello to everyone on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here with my fantabulous co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, and
And
together...
her droopy microphone.
Yes, and together, Rebecca Wood, her droopy microphone, and I will be getting together here and giving you an hour of fantastic radio called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment, and we talk about it in the ways that it affects you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your home and your family and your friends and your pets and the birds that are flying overhead and the fish that are swimming in the water and the worms that are crawling around in the ground there, because, like it or not, all of us are wrapped up on this wonderful planet called Earth. And we've got a great show for you today. We will be talking just sort of randomly for the next 10 minutes or so here, and feel free to call in at any time, 877-909-1007, reacting to something we've said, or if you have some sort of question about any sort of environmental or ecological issue.
Joe will be talking about some very bad ideas that our legislature has.
Yes.
Again.
Right. And so that's the next part, is I will be giving, after our little random chat here, I'll give a talk about what happened with SJR 3. There was a hearing this past week in Columbus on Tuesday, and I went down there with a bunch of other people, and we all were talking about it, and it's really kind of an important issue if you believe in democracy in the United States of America, because SJR 3 is the bill that we've talked about before that is proposing a constitutional convention for the United States where they get to rewrite the whole Constitution. After that, we'll hear from our fantastic advertisers and patrons. And then, Rebecca, it will be your turn to take over the mic. What are you going to talk about this week?
White clover versus running buffalo clover. Know the difference?
Okay.
I'm not sure I do, but we'll try.
All right, interesting. Then it's ecological news from around the world. And as I said, hopefully at some point we'll hear from you at 877-909-1007. All right, so here we are on June 22nd, and it is hot.
Yes, it is.
That is the big news that's even made it onto the mainstream media, is that the next several days here, we are going to have record heat. And, you know, all those people that still doubt global warming, you know, and they say, oh, we've had heat waves before. Yes, we have had heat waves before, but the whole idea that we're about to have record heat waves means no.
We've never had anything like this before. Summer did not used to be like this. I remember what summer was like.
Yeah. I mean, that literally the first day or two of summer, and we're going to probably top 100 degrees.
This is worse than 1970s summer in western Kentucky, where we could still go swimming in October.
Wow. Yeah.
It's much muggier.
Yeah.
Also, I'm old and feeble, so but that's. I still think it's much worse.
but it's good you're sharing
And
your
science
memories
backs me.
with the young people of today, because literally
Yeah.
it's hard. We need to remember, us older folks need to remember, they have not known the cooler world. We literally grew up on a much cooler planet than the one they've got now, and it's not looking good for the next generations. It was kind of interesting. I was watching the Weather Channel to get some data and some numbers here. We're apparently going to be 97 in Toledo and 97 in Columbus over the next couple days. And the heat index, the feel-like temperature, could be as high as 105. And so the guy on the Weather Channel is actually advising people to seek shelter in their basements. It's bad when the Weather Channel's telling you to go hide in your basement.
Yeah.
It is not good. And this heat wave is covering pretty much from the middle of the continent all the way over up into the Adirondacks, the mountains, the Appalachian Mountains up in the northeastern United States. Record heat all the way across the land.
Maybe we'll have some more tornadoes in a minute, and cool
things
things off
down
a little bit and take down some old barns.
Well,
so yuppies can use the barn wood to decorate. Is that no longer a thing? I hope that's no longer a thing.
Well, they actually just tried that over in North Dakota. I was going to mention that they just had this massive derecho, which is essentially, it's like a hurricane but over land, and that had huge tornadoes that killed a whole bunch of people and knocked down a whole bunch of buildings.
I thought a derecho was where the wind was moving in one direction. Like it's really, really strong and bad, but it's in one direction.
Well, the
But maybe
storm
not.
goes in one direction.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the storm was traveling, but
'Cause
inside the
derecho
storm.
means straight ahead in Spanish.
Right. But inside the storm, there were tornadoes spawned.
Right.
And
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and those tornadoes.
It brought some little friends with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very dramatic.
Yeah, we got to explore the basement with our dog a few nights ago.
Uh-huh,
Briefly, but...
To sort of get ready. Yeah.
Well,
so.
no, because a siren went off, but then it quickly stopped going off.
Mm-hmm. So, as I've said before, most people believe in global warming. All the polls show that anywhere from 3/4 to 80% of people believe in global warming, but that number actually increases during heat waves.
Yeah,
So-
I bet.
And that-
Wow.
Yeah, actually, they've done experiments where they've done surveys of people while they were in a room, and just by turning the temperature of the room up a couple degrees, they could affect the results of the survey by about 10%. So there's about 10% of the people who
I don't understand
like-
science, but I know when I'm hot.
right is there global warming? All right, I'm hot. Yeah, there is. All right. So so for you
Right,
folks
wow.
especially, seize this opportunity and contact your Congress people and tell them this
Not
is
looking
real
forward
and you
to
need
this month's air conditioning electric bill.
yeah, and you
Tell
need to do
someone.
something about it. And there's all kinds of other side effects of being hot. Getting hot increases your cortisol and your stress hormones, and it affects your ability to regulate your emotions. People, in other words, you get cranky.
I think 98 degrees or 99 degrees, something like that is the temperature at which the most murders take place.
Really? Oh,
I think so.
Yeah,
I read that
believe
someplace.
it. I believe it. So,
Yeah.
so what I'm saying to folks is, seize that anger, use that rage, and turn it into positive action. And contact your Congress people and tell them that all these policies that are based on the idea that there is no global warming are literally insane.
If you're feeling confused and angry, just pick up the phone and you get your legislature and say, "Too hot, og smash."
Yeah. Well, I don't recommend that, but
If enough people, if 1,000 people do it, though, they're going to take notice.
all right, if we can get 1,000 people to sign up for that. Sure.
Right? Yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah, just email me at joe@joedemare4greenfuture.org and we'll get the list going. If we get up to 1,000, we'll all do it.
Okay. Yeah.
So the heat wave is also affecting Alaska. In fact, this past week, Alaska released its very first heat advisory.
Oh my.
They're saying it's so hot in Alaska that you have to be careful and not go out in the sun and stay in air conditioning. Of course, not a lot of the houses in Alaska have air conditioning. So
Yeah, I've been having a really great time walking the dog between my sensitivity to heat and my last bout of COVID reduced my lung capacity some.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not good. And now the actual physical temperatures are probably only going to be in the upper 80s, but their heat index, it's going to feel like 110. So of course, we've also been continuing to report upon the effect of all this heat is having on Canada, where they've had the forests of the north dry out. And so our update on the Canadian wildfire situation: 207 fires burning right now, 67, about a third of them are out of control. So far, 3.8 million hectares have burned, which is 4 times the average. And that means that that there's basically they're at level 5. That means everything Canada has, all their firefighting resources are being employed at full strength, and they're still, not controlling about a third of the fires. And more communities evacuated. Thousands more people have to flee their homes from the fires. And this is what we've been saying would happen for decades, and now it is happening.
And
so,
I don't really need your entire annual harvest in vapor form, Manitoba.
yeah, right.
Take it back.
Yeah, keep your carbon compounds to yourself.
Yes.
In Canada. All right. Well, so that's kind of the gosh, it's hot part of the show.
Yes.
And now I wanted
You're talking about people becoming irrational when there's too much heat.
yes. And now I want to talk about the what happened down in there in Columbus on Tuesday at the SJR3 hearing. And I'm going to just preface this with those of you who listened to last week's show, and I hope everyone did, and will remember that I had a pre-recorded show last Sunday. The reason is that this whole past week I was expecting to be out on a remote island in Lake Michigan doing primitive camping. The problem is, just before I was getting on the ferry from Charlevoix to Beaver, I checked my email one last time, and I guess that was a mistake, because there I saw they had finally put in the notice for the third hearing on SJR 3. And just to remind everybody, that's the bill that calls for a constitutional convention. A lot of states have passed such a thing already. In fact, you only need 6 more states to pass it, and then it will happen. And a constitutional convention can literally rewrite the Constitution from start to finish. Nothing is safe. No rights that are guaranteed will continue to be guaranteed. Nothing, they could change the whole thing, term limits, whatever. So a lot of people have opposed this, and we've had 2 guests on the show already talking about it. But I felt like I had to go down and testify, because they've been trying to sneak this through. Basically, there has the first hearing was actually attributed to the wrong subcommittee, and so if you were trying to follow it through the regular government processes, you wouldn't even know that it happened. And so I got some friends together, and we went down there, and I did give some testimony. And if you want to look on the Ohio channel and look for the Senate General Government Committee, you can watch the whole proceedings themselves. And my testimony was actually kind of dramatic. Well, let me preface this a little bit in saying that they limited us to 3 minutes, and the quote unquote reason they gave for that was that there were so many people who wanted to talk. But the reason there were so many people was that they mixed up both the proponent and opponent and interested party testimony today. The first 2 hearings were all proponent. Only people who want this to happen got to testify. And so what they did was they threw this open to those people again. They gave them a 3rd hearing, and the opponents only got the Tuesday's hearing. That's it. So they limited us to 3 minutes each. But the proponents at the earlier hearings got 5, and some of them went on for longer. But my testimony was pretty dramatic because as I got up to speak, I had to edit my thing down to 3 minutes, which was a pain. But I noticed that the chairwoman, Reiki, had, as I got up to speak, she picked up her gavel. She had her gavel in her hand before I even started speaking. And
she was riding the gavel.
Yeah. And it told me that she had read my testimony, which was kind of flattering.
Here comes Joe.
Right.
Get the gavel out.
But she started banging the gavel as soon as I started talking.
Oh Lord!
Claiming that I was insulting Teresa Gavarone, who's my personal senator. She's the state senator that represents my district, and she's the vice chair of this committee.
What happens when they insult us? Just out of curiosity.
I didn't bring a gavel myself. I should have brought my own gavel.
Bang,
Next
bang.
time.
You're insulting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're out of order. Telling me I'm out of order.
And then you'll be in jail in Columbus.
So what I wanted to do today was actually read my full testimony because I had to chop this thing up mercilessly to get down to 3 minutes. And so I kind of want to read the whole thing, which is 5 minutes. I timed it out. It's a 5-minute speech, so it's not terribly painful to listen to unless you're Teresa Gavarone. She must have found it painful. But what I'd like someone to do is listen to this and just give me some feedback. It's say, was this really gavelable? I mean, should I have been cut off? Because I don't insult her or anything like that. I just talk about some experiences I've had with her. So, all right. So anyway, so here we go. This was my testimony that I gave on June 17th. It's nice to see my senator, Teresa Gavarone, here. I have tried repeatedly to set up a meeting with her to discuss this bill, but have been completely shut out. I think perhaps the senator is remembering the last time my co-chair Helen Dukes and I managed to have a meeting with her. That was the meeting where we told her not to vote for HB 6. We explained to her all the problems with the bill, how it would hurt ratepayers and the environment. She chose not to follow our advice and instead voted for HB 6.
So pointing out her voting record is insulting her. Well, that's telling.
Yeah.
How dare you say true things about me?
That seems to be it. Okay. So, in fact, she was the deciding vote on HB 6. It's taken 5 years, 2 criminal convictions, major legislation, and 2 suicides for Ohio to partially recover from that terrible mistake. And then, I'm here today to tell you that if SJR 3 or SJR 6, which is actually Teresa Gavarone's version of SJR 3, passes, Ohio may never recover. All right, that was the introduction. I was not allowed to get through and got gavelled on repeatedly.
All righty then.
So, to continue, quite simply, the convening of a constitutional convention would mean the end of democratic rule in the United States of America. The convention is the ultimate authority. Its decisions can't be overturned or appealed. The democratic processes which have allowed Ohio to slowly, painfully claw our way back from the HB 6 mistake do not exist here. Some say that with supporting legislation limiting its scope, democracy could survive a convention. However, most legal scholars, including such luminaries as Thurgood Marshall and James Madison, disagree. With all due respect, my dear senators and representatives, I trust their judgment more than I trust yours. With a simple stroke of the pen, the convention could override any state legislation, and the conventioneers could indemnify themselves from any consequences. And who would those conventioneers be? What's to stop Ron DeSantis from appointing Trump, or Greg Abbott from appointing Musk? We are already seeing unprecedented and illegal grabs for power by Trump and the executive branch. What happens when Trump or his acolytes are given the power to overturn the Constitution itself? The Bill of Rights? Gone. Separation of church and state? Gone. Term limits for Trump? Gone. Of course, none of this may upset you. Increasingly, Republicans have been accused of being anti-democratic. You disagree? Prove it. Reject this bill. Here's your chance to prove your detractors wrong. When you were sworn into this body, you solemnly swore to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. You will be breaking that solemn oath in the most direct way possible if you hand our Constitution over to a pack of politically appointed people to tear apart. Remember, you swore oath to the Constitution, not a Constitution. Whatever emerges from this convention would be sure to tear our already divided country apart. The men and women in our armed forces have also promised to lay down their very lives to defend the Constitution, again, not a Constitution. We've already seen signs of unrest in our military. This could lead to open revolt. Besides, there's no great advantage to being the sixth state from the last to call for a convention. The money and campaign contributions really start to flow for the final five. Ideally, you want to be the very last domino to fall. Senator Gavrode can tell you that by being the deciding vote for HB 6, she was able to carve out special deals worth many millions of dollars.
See, that's what you should have gambled you.
Yeah. Well, I actually didn't.
Oh, that's actually probably true.
Yeah, I actually didn't read that part.
Yeah.
That was part of what I edited out for my 3 minutes.
Right.
So, yeah. I could see that. I could see.
You were being nice and holding back.
So then I said, send these folks packing this year. They'll be back next year with even more money. There you go. The HBO series Dark Money shined a blinding light on what's really going on with HB 6, how dark money forces actually control what's happening in the State House, and why our legislators ignored hundreds of hours of testimony from citizens in order to pass HB 6's really bad legislation. Now those same dark forces are demanding that you pass a truly ruinous legislation overturning the Constitution itself. My son, a fine young man, asked me why I was bothering to come speak before you today. He said, this is the end game of 25 years of Republican scheming. There's no way they're going to listen to you or turn back now. I disagree. As state legislators, it's in your own enlightened self-interest to limit federal power. The 10th Amendment in our current Constitution says, any powers that are not specifically given to the federal government are reserved to the states or the people. If that amendment is overturned, then you, state senators, become superfluous. States' rights, which used to be a conservative rallying cry, will cease to exist. In fact, every amendment that ensures our liberty has been the result of many years of work, anguish, and sometimes blood shed by Americans who for 250 years have been seeking a more perfect union. That search has made us the most powerful and important nation on earth. One of the proponents of this bill during her testimony pulled out a big binder, whining that the Constitution was too big and too complicated. Well, my copy of the Constitution is much smaller, and I plan to have the prop, that little Constitution booklet that fits in your pocket. But it contains the accumulated wisdom of hundreds of years of running our big, beautiful, diverse country. Don't throw that wisdom away. Don't tear up the Constitution. Reject this bill. Let it die here in committee, as terrible ideas are supposed to do. And so that was it.
Yeah, it has many and varied imperfections, but whatever the people calling this convention want is assuredly worse.
Yes. And so, what do you think? Was she right to gavel me? Did I deserve gaveling? 877-909-1007. And just a couple other little things I wanted to mention about this. Is in my research of this, one of the main things is that the proponents of the bill keep saying we could limit what they're going to talk about. They'll only talk about term limits. They'll only talk about, budgets, whatever. But the very first Constitutional Convention was actually a runaway convention because it was called for the, quote, sole and express purpose, unquote, of putting in amendments to the Articles of Confederation. But Madison had spent the previous year drawing up this Constitution that he wanted for the United States of America. And so he was fully aware that this idea that you're just going to have a limited convention was a lie, because he had the plan for the whole year of, once he got in there, tossing out the Articles of Confederation and putting in the Constitution he had written. And so that's also why Madison was one of the strongest opponents of another constitutional convention, because he realized all his work could be undone. Now, you could argue in the case of Madison that it was a ends justifies the means, that what we got out was much better than what he was charged with doing. But you have to ask yourself, are today's legislators as good as Madison was? I mean, would what we get out of a second constitutional convention be better than what we have now, or would it most likely be
Madison was if I'm remembering about him right, he may have had his flaws, but he was a real smart and ethically consistent guy.
Yeah.
Whether his ethics were perfect or not, we don't know, but you could argue that. But he was pretty consistent about his beliefs.
Yeah. And
acting on them.
But he used, so the trick he used.
You knew what James Madison was about.
Yeah. I mean, he did have the best interests of the country at heart. You know, that's clear from the following 250 years. But the point I want to make is that the trick of saying, oh, it's a limited convention and we can limit what these conventioneers do, that trick is over 250 years old.
I'm pretty sure you can't limit what they do.
No, you can't.
Well, like it says in the Constitution that you can't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because they wrote the Constitution, so they just put it in there. So that was it. So that was my report. Some interesting other things about the hearing was that there were a number of conservatives there. In fact, Alan Keyes was the big, headliner for the conservatives. We have a caller. Yes, caller, go ahead.
Hello. So I was very impressed with your decision and to forego your time off or your little vacation, and but your statement was dramatic, and I hope taken seriously by some people. But I just wanted to compliment you on having done that. I don't know. I kind of get cynical these days about how much people are listening who you're trying to affect change with. And so, but I hope so. I hope it's effective. But congratulations.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much. And like I say, I do know that they did read it because, like I say, she had picked up the gavel before I started speaking.
That's proof,
so she was ready to go.
Well, either that or one of her staff told her to do it. Being cynical again, right?
Yeah. Well, it's hard not to be.
I'm very. I had a long conversation with a friend of mine I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but he's very much a Trump MAGA person, but he's only person I know who's on that side who I can actually have discussions with about things, right? He said to me, I'm not going to try and shoot you for your opinion. So
well, that's reassuring.
I'm having a discussion with him, and he is it is so deeply steeped in these people's existence about, I heard one yesterday I'd never heard before, and that is that he believes, and so I assume a lot of other people believe on that side, that the reason global warming or the climate issue is a hoax is that people, actually this doesn't make any sense because he had both sides of his argument. But anyway, he went on to say that people like me, because I call myself a socialist and I'm proud to do that people like me believe that the earth would be better off without persons, without human beings on it. So therefore we want the planet to burn down or whatever. So I just realized that he was talking on both sides of his argument.
Wow.
Which they do a lot, right? It's like COVID doesn't exist, but where did it come from, right? It's like, What the hell are you talking? So anyway, that's my little spiel. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for the call, and thanks for the nice things you said about my testimony. which I only got to give a portion of. So, all right. Any other thoughts? Any other callers? 877-909-1007.
Ecologically speaking, I think, okay, humans have been around for a while. I know we're a flash in the pan in some ways, but we've been around for a while, and suddenly yanking out a whole part of an ecosystem would be a bad idea.
Well, yeah. I mean, we have been a part of affecting ecosystems since we've existed. I mean, every biological organism does that. I mean, there's a sort of this idea that the Native Americans in North America, for example, just sort of lived in this pristine wilderness without affecting it. But it's become very clear that they had a huge impact on it. They would keep areas of forest clear using fire. They had large agricultural settlements where they raised, corn and other maize and beans on a huge scale. And all that changes the environment and changes the kind of critters and organisms that live in that environment. And so, yeah, we're part of it. The Earth, the Earth would not be better off without humans. The Earth would just be better off with humans who cared about the Earth.
Plus, if we're smart enough to eliminate ourselves, then we're smart enough to stay here and have minimal impacts on the environment.
I like to think so. That's why we have For a Green Future.
Exactly.
We could actually figure all this stuff out.
That is why.
Okay. All right. Well, time to go on to hear from our advertisers and patrons. For a Green Future is brought to you by the Wood County Park District. Imagine a place where nature meets adventure, where you can climb, paddle, fish, and explore. That place, it's right here in Wood County. The Wood County Park District is here to protect, preserve, and inspire. We conserve natural and cultural treasures so you can enjoy the outdoors like never before by maintaining green spaces, providing fun programs, restoring wildlife habitats, and leading outdoor adventures. Want to connect with nature? Try your hand at archery, bouldering, geocaching, paddling, rappelling, and more. Whether you're seeking experience or a peaceful retreat, our parks are open every day from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset all year round. Come explore. Get outside, experience nature, your parks, your adventures waiting for you. Find us online at wcparks.org or follow on Instagram, Facebook, or X, or call 419-353-1897. The Wood County Park District, preserving nature, creating adventure, and inspiring a greener future. And we're also brought to you by our patrons. And our patrons are wonderful people who've gone to patreon.com, that's Patreon. There they searched for a Green Future. Up popped our Patreon page. They scrolled through, read some gripping prose written by me, and decided to give us some money, so they picked a membership level that matched their budget. Every month now, those folks, a little bit comes out of their account, comes over to us, and that's how we can afford to keep bringing you this incredible show. And part of what makes us incredible is Rebecca's weekly contribution. Rebecca, what will we be hearing about this week?
Well, okay, this is probably going to seem trivial to some people, but to me, especially right now, with all of the terrifying things happening in the world, ordinary life and ordinary things seem extraordinarily precious. And so, continuing with What the Heck is Going On Becca's Lawn series, I'm going to talk about white clover.
Okay.
There's a patch of it in the little patch of grass between our front sidewalk and our driveway. So I've been thinking for a while, well, okay, now that's happening. Well, let's find out about it. So, yeah, white clover is known as Trifolium repens. It's a low-growing, cool-season legume. It's a legume. It's a plant in the Fabaceae family. Fabaceae, the beans. It's in the bean family. And you're like, but Becca, things in the bean family usually are edible and have pods with little seeds in them. And guess what? White clover is in fact edible, and Where are the seed pods, you ask? Well, they're hidden inside those big fluffy flowers.
Oh.
Those eventually, when the petals turn brown and wilt, it turns into a seed pod. And
Oh,
that's
very
how we
nice.
get new little baby clovers.
Aha.
Unless we're using the lateral stem thingies. Yeah. So they're also pretty good at nitrogen fixation, and they talked a little bit about how this actually works, which I've been curious for a while. It has something to do with them being symbiotic with a bacteria called rhizobium, I believe. So yeah, which with the help of this bacterium, it's able to convert atmospheric nitrogen into usable form for plants in the soil. So it's like a natural nitrogen is a fertilizer, as a lot of people know. That's one thing that you do with it, and so those little blossoms are just pulling fertilizer right out of the air and making your lawn all lush and green and lovely with little flowers in it. So yeah, white clover is edible, raw or cooked. It's safe in moderate amounts. Probably nothing is that safe in extreme amounts.
True.
It can be used in salads, tea, and flowers. What did that say? Flowers? No, that doesn't make sense. Salads, tea, and it can be ground up and used to make flour.
Ah, okay.
You need a lot of clover, I would think. But
Yeah, those seed pods are pretty tiny on clover, yeah.
yeah, as far as I know, it's gluten-free. So, yeah, you can basically eat all the above-ground parts. Bad news. White clover originated in Europe and Central Asia and can displace native species. So
Oh.
it's considered sort of contextually invasive. It can be evasive because of its aggressive spreading in specific areas. It spreads both by seeds and something called stolons, which are runner stems, basically. If it's underneath the ground, it's a rhizome stem, like lateral, horizontal stems that they use to spread by. And it has little nodes that can develop into roots on this above ground stem called a stolon, because it's above the ground.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it also grows in dense mats, which tends to crowd out the sun for anything else that's around it. So some places in specific situations, it's invasive. I found out it's similar to there are a lot of different species of clover, I believe, in North America, some of which are native. But white clover is very similar to something called a native Ohio clover called running buffalo clover, which looks exactly like it, except for it has a larger flowery head, which you'd really need several examples of both species for that to be useful, or pictures, I don't know. But yeah, it also has a white arrow on the leaves. Now, this interests me because I looked at the leaves in my front yard, and they have to me what looks like a slightly lighter green chevron on them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's what they're calling an arrow. It might be I have white running buffalo clover right in my very own yard, but I'm gonna have to consult the experts and do more research and stuff. But yeah, white running buffalo clover currently exists in Hamilton and Pike counties. Hamilton is down near Cincy. Pike is 2 counties away, so they're both in southern Ohio, separated by a couple of intervening counties. So really, the takeaway from all this is that find out what kind of clover you got in your yard. Find out what kind of clovers your area is supposed to have. And if you live in southern Ohio, you should probably check for little chevrons or arrows or whatever and figure out what kind you got.
Cool. Great.
And then theoretically, I don't know, get some white buffalo clover seeds. I don't even know how you do that. Probably it's possible.
Yeah, you can pretty much get any sort of native seed now.
If you try
There's
hard
a whole industry. Actually, I was going to talk about that in my last show.
They got everything on the internet.
Yeah, it's a movement now to people replacing their lawns with native plants. It's really kind of cool. So.
I'm glad something is winning after the debacle with the blue mason bees and the wasps last year.
Uh-huh.
This is the crazy thing. It's like, oh, you think it's going to be relief from the politics of the world, but no. Your lawn is a battleground. Things are winning, things are losing.
Yep.
It's crazy.
There's competition, cooperation,
Yeah.
politics. Politics is everywhere.
Yep.
So, all right. Okay, so on to ecological news. And the first story is, this is actually just a reaction to a meme I saw, because there's this thing on Facebook, it's called Laughing Duck Memes, and this guy just literally takes pictures out of context from Disney scenes, especially using Donald Duck, and just puts his own captions on them to get attention. But I've seen this idea that he was spreading with this meme before, and the quote in the meme is, "If we put up so many solar panels and LED light bulbs and windmills, why are my electric bills so high?" And so,
because your legislatures are corrupt.
yeah, well, and specifically the what are called the public utility commissions. Like,
Yeah.
In Ohio, we have the PUCO, which is the Public Utility Commission of Ohio. There's similar commissions.
Having said that, I have no specific knowledge of specific corruption on the part of the Laughing Ducks legislatures, wherever they might be.
Great. So these commissions were set up back in the 70s, actually, the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And actually, I remember, because this was one of the first things I ever did, like going door to door convincing people of stuff, was that Ohio needed a Public Utilities Commission to rein in the utilities.
We do need one, just not this one.
Well, we need one, but we need one that's not been corrupted by the utilities themselves.
Ideally.
But what's happening all over the country is that the utilities are buying this cheap solar and wind power at like a fraction of the cost of the coal and the gas and the nuclear, and then they're just marking it up so high that they are now making record profits. So literally, that's where the savings that are coming from the wind and the solar are going, is directly into the pockets of these utility companies. And there's a lot of examples around the country. I'll just talk about a couple. One is, of course, PG&E in California, and we've talked about this before, that the Utilities Commission there approved $600 million in rate increases to pay for fixing up the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant, which was supposed to close 2 years ago, but which they're keeping open beyond all reason or measure. And so with that $600 million in rate increases, PG&E last year made a record profit of $2 billion. And that might seem like a lot, except our very own First Energy, last year, thanks to rate increases, First Energy's revenues were up $14 billion over the course of 1 year. That's an 8% increase in revenues. And I know you're probably saying, but Joe, that's revenue, what about profit? Well, their gross profit out of that $14 billion in revenues was $9.5 billion. So about 2/3 of what they took in, was profit, and they just gave it right back out again to their owners and shareholders. That's a 13% increase in profit. And there are right now in front of the Ohio Public Utilities Commission a whole bunch of additional rate increases with all sorts of excuses behind them. But the bottom line is that all these utility commissions, which are typically appointed by their governors, are being influenced by the utilities they're supposed to be they're regulating, and they pretty much just give them whatever they want. That's why, laughing duck, that's why your electric bills are so high, even though wind and solar are cheaper. They're literally
because we're not using them enough.
Yeah,
essentially.
They're literally just being used to get more
subsidized
profit
nuclear, yeah.
for the utility companies. All right, and supporting that, I wanted to report on Lazard, which is a think tank. They came out with their levelized cost of energy estimates for 2025, and once again, same as for the past almost decade here, renewables, wind and solar, are still by far the cheapest form of energy. Cheaper than gas, cheaper than coal, much, much cheaper than nuclear. So, that has not changed. So Lazard is not some sort of, lefty, eco-friendly thing. In fact, in their report, they're kind of like encouraging carbon capture and storage, which is like really anti-environmental. It's kind of a really stupid waste of money. And they also encourage nukes. They're like trying to put a spin on it, saying, there was a cost drop between Vogtle 3 and Vogtle 4, and if that cost drop kept going, then we would, then nukes would eventually, in like 40 years or so, be inexpensive, cheaper than wind and solar. Yeah, in other words, just trying to juggle the numbers to come out with the conclusion you want. But the numbers they're providing so far are showing wind and solar are the best. Another sort of a surprising result from this year's report is that storage costs, battery storage, have declined dramatically, and they attribute this to, sadly, a lack of EV demand. They expect there to be more EV demand. Although EV is increasing and becoming a higher and higher percentage, it's not increasing at the rate that the car companies had hoped. And also the technical storage technology has improved quite a bit. The batteries are getting much more dense in terms of the amount of energy they can store. So especially at peak times, this is becoming an extremely lucrative area to invest in. So now, speaking of green futures, I thought we'd have a nice story from someplace where people are actually doing things correctly. This is a story from DutchCycling.nl, as in Netherlands. June 15th, and the title is Rethinking Transport Infrastructure Through the Lens of Bikeonomics. So over in Europe, there's this huge move to get cars off the streets and to replace them with bikes, both pedal bikes and e-bikes. And one of the things they've done in the Netherlands is they've started estimating the true cost of maintaining road and car infrastructure. And that is, they add in everything that you have to calculate, or you can calculate, from having a car-based economic system. So, for example, if you have cars and you have traffic jams, the people who live near those roads get exposed to lots of pollution from the tailpipes of the cars sitting in the traffic jam. That causes them asthma. That asthma actually has a social cost. And normally, they haven't calculated that in. They've just said, we'll put a road, it costs this much, and that's it. But by adding in costs like increased health costs and, increased travel times and all this sort of thing, they have found that investing in bike infrastructure has a huge return. In other words, societally, you make a big profit the more you switch from cars to bikes. And they gave an example. There is in the Netherlands town of Utrecht, they have a bike parking garage. It was the biggest in the world with 12,500 bike spaces. It opened in 2019, cost 30 million euros. They were criticized at the time because they're like, look at this, goofy project. But they've analyzed it since then, and people who ride bikes, the social cost of maintaining their infrastructure is about €1 per person per day. Maintaining the infrastructure for buses and public transportation is €3 per person per day. And the cost of maintaining cars per person per day is like many times that. So it was a tremendous investment. And having bikes eliminates the need for like widening roads to get rid of traffic jams and stuff, because if you just shave off a percentage of the cars, that reduces the number of traffic jams and the amount of congestion dramatically. Just taking off like 10% of the cars gets rid of a whole bunch of congestion. Not
to mention, it's sort of unspeakably cruel that we judge people for not having initiative and wanting to work and things. But then in Northwest Ohio and in many other places, if you get a job and you have a car, most of the jobs you can get are not going to pay for your car's upkeep or a new car when you need one.
Right. Yeah.
So that means that it's just a matter of time before you can't afford it and you lose your job.
Well, in the U.S., it costs about $10,000 a year to maintain a car in terms of gas and oil changes and tires and all that stuff. So
Yeah, people on food stamps can't afford that.
yeah, that's too much. So it's so what should be a path out of poverty can become something that actually puts you deeper into poverty.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so anyway, good on the people at the Netherlands. Like they find that they just did a big project. They have 2,500 or 22,000 bikes now available at train stations, so that people don't need to get a car for that last mile to go from the train stop to where they're getting to. They just have public bikes they can hop on, and that gives a return of 2.4 euros per bike. And they're looking to expand now because of e-bikes. They're trying to create dedicated bike paths to allow people to do the 5 to 10 mile trips that they can now do on their e-bike better than they could when they were just pedaling. So, and it's also seemed like a point to remind everybody that the people in the Netherlands, the Dutch, are like the happiest people in the world.
And you can say, oh, that only works in the summer. Well, the summer is kind of when you don't want bad things to happen to the ozone.
Yeah.
That's when everything is really hot and
that's what car
you
exhaust
don't need
causes
the extra
smog.
exhaust. You remember in Toledo we have ozone action days, or we used to. Anyway, I don't know what's going on with that now.
Yeah.
Used to be you got a free ride on the bus, but that was something good, so we got rid of it.
All right, well, on to our next story. Not nearly so nice and fun. USA Today, June 18th. The title is Supreme Court Greenlights Nuclear Waste Site in Texas. And unfortunately, we've talked about this before with Diane DeRigo. The federal government's trying to force an interim, quote unquote, interim nuclear storage on Texas and New Mexico. And the people fighting it had won all the lower court battles, but the Supreme Court just overturned it and said, yes, they can have interim nuclear storage, which means they'll be carrying highly radioactive stuff all over the country on trains and on trucks that emit gamma radiation that pushes right through the shielding and on the trucks and will irradiate everyone and everything around them. The problem was that this lawsuit, the challenge to the interim storage was being brought by the oil and gas industry. And they did it because they said, we don't want our oil fields contaminated with radioactive waste, which is kind of weird. But the Supreme Court used a technicality. They said, oh, you didn't participate in the NRC's licensing proceedings, so you have no standing, so you can't challenge it, which is a terrible thing because lots of times nobody knows about a terrible environmental decision until after it's already been through the process.
Yeah.
And the bulldozers show up and they start destroying stuff. So using that as the technicality to knock away this lawsuit is doubly bad because now we're all going to get irradiated, and it really slams the door on citizens groups who take time to get organized, who people have to get together and say, this is bad. We should challenge it. And the Supreme Court just said, oh, you didn't participate in the official proceedings, therefore you can't challenge it. That is terrible. All right, next story. And we don't have too much more to go here. But so this is just kind of a fun story. Methane-eating sea spiders.
Ooh.
This is in our good friends at phys.org on June 20th. Sea spiders found farming methane eating microbes in cultivated biofilm.
Oh boy.
So they went down to one of these seeps, one of these deep sea trenches that is bubbling methane. It's got all kinds of critters around it living off the gas bubbling out of the ocean, the bottom of the sea. And they found 3 new species of Cercospora sea spiders. And essentially what they do is they cover their own exoskeletons with these bacterial films. And they were wondering about this because at these deep sea vents, there's always been lots of these spiders. but they have not found anything in their stomachs. So they've been like, what are these spiders
So
eating?
they're just absorbing it through their exoskeleton?
Well, what they're doing is they are cultivating these bacteria. They're placing the bacteria on their own exoskeleton, and it forms
Right.
little clumps, little volcano-shaped, bacteria volcanoes. And as they crawl around on the vent, they put themselves in places where they expose the microbes to the methane, and the microbes eat the methane, and then they scrape the microbes off of themselves, and that's what they're eating.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's what they're surviving on.
All right.
And it's apparently very successful because, like I say, these spiders are in all the hydrothermal vents.
Right.
And they had no idea what they were doing before. The other critters, the mussels, worms, and sponges that live off this methane, they can eat that directly themselves. They've evolved to just eat the methane. But these spiders use the bacteria, so they're their own little farm that can go around and
Wow.
yeah. So it's just another cool example of weird things that nature can do. All right. Well, I didn't get much time to talk about natural lawns. We're coming up on the end of the show here, but we'll talk more about that next week. It's a thing. A lot of people are doing this, just covering the lawns with native flowers. And
White buffalo clover.
like white buffalo clover.
Oh, no, running buffalo clover.
Running
Sorry.
buffalo clover.
It is white, though.
And it has all kinds of environmental benefits.
Yep.
All right, but I guess that's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
We are signing off.
I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, a creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!